Okay, good. Good. My dad was an East End boy. He was from somewhere over there. He claims that he taught himself to speak German in Whitechapel Library, a claim I take with a pinch of salt. I am not as organised as my dad, barefoot or not. He claimed he was also barefoot while he was doing it. He was a ragged, barefoot East End Jew who taught himself German because Marxism. I'm not as well organised as him. I've been banging away at Duolingo now for about 5 years and I still don't really speak German. So, and I'm very cross with him because he never taught me any Yiddish, which would have been really useful, especially when I started working in television. So I don't do speeches and I don't do talks. I do basically a 1 hour question and answer session. Those of you who've met me before will know this. This approach has several advantages and several disadvantages. Whoops. The main advantage being is that at least one person will be interested in what I'm talking about. The main disadvantage being that if you don't ask me any questions, I just sit here, you just sit there, I drink my Coke and then we go home. So I really, it's up to you. This is my way of saying basically the entertainment value of this evening will be down to the audience participation. I understand that's a pain. I hate audience participation. I hate pantos. I hated pantos when I was a child. Why am I doing this? Why am I involved in this? I'm paying you to go on stage and entertain me. I don't see why I have to be involved in it. Oh, sing along, children. Nah. I was a very rude child. So, I'm going to put it straight out there, for a question. Oh, before I do that, just remembered. Who has been dragged here by their spouse or partner? Anyone? Come on, you can put your hand up. All right, those of you that haven't put your hand up out of embarrassment, I'd like to apologise, okay? I'm sorry, it's not my idea. Those of you who hasn't read any of the books? Okay, there's going to be spoilers. I'm sorry. People are going to ask questions. I'm going to get carried away. So I'm just saying now, there's going to be spoilers. You should read the books before you come out to these events, really, seriously. They're available in the room over there if you want to quickly run over, get clued up. Okay, also very good Audible versions as well. They pay me to say that. Right, I would like a question. Has anyone got a question? That was a very fast hand.
There's been some background given to the story of the... There's been some... Hello?
Yeah.
There's been some background given in books to the talking foxes and how they came to be. Will that be elaborated on in the future? And will we get any more of the talking foxes? They're my favourites.
I'm a bit worried about the talking foxes because they kind of came in and sort of took over a book, and I'm not very happy about that because you have your plans and then along come they are very cute, and I'm a little bit wary of kind of sort of like the Disneyfication. I put more cute. Sometimes if you overdo the cute, it can be a bit. But they're very appealing. I know where they came from. They presumably know where they came from, sort of. One day it may be explained, or it might not. I don't know. It's really, I don't write like that. I don't think to myself, I have to explain this now. I have to give the background to this character here. What I basically do is I write a story, and then occasionally I suddenly go, oh my God, that's that background to that character. I can put that in the book and get a good 2,000 words out. Yay! Which is like, at the beginning stuff of a book is really good if you can get 2,000 words out of something you've already thought of. A good example for that is I didn't know who Molly was until we met the Queen of the Elves, and I went, okay, that explains a lot. So, sometimes it's a surprise to me as well. But yes, there will be more foxes because Abigail and the foxes are kind of very closely linked, and there's going to be more Abigail. Because I just like writing a stroppy 14-year-old teenager. Everyone should write their own inner 14-year-old stroppy teenager. It's just very liberating. So yes, another question because I'm rambling now. Person there? So I'm colourblind and face blind. Oh, okay. Person there.
Well, let's try the obvious question first. When are we going to get the next novel, do you think?
Well, that's kind of complicated. You see, my publishers, having been burnt a couple of times, don't actually do release dates until I've handed in the book. I don't know why. It's some superstition they have. However, I have actually written 2 novellas over lockdown because what else was I going to do? And so basically the next novella, which is the Reynolds novella, is coming out next year in the summertime, and then presumably there will be another novel after that, probably in the spring of the next year. And at some point they will then release the Nightingale novella. They have plans, right? I am actually on a spreadsheet somewhere in an office, and they actually sit around a table and discuss me as part of their release strategy, okay? And I don't get to say when these books come out, because as far as I'm concerned, I want them out now. I need the money, publication date and all that. So, and also because it's really hard for me because I forget what I haven't told anyone. So they go, what's going to happen in the next book? I go, I can't tell you. I really want to tell you. I wrote it like 3 months ago and I can't tell you, you know. So, but that's probably the release schedule. I'm going as fast as I can, in case you're wondering. I'm not a very fast writer. I tried getting faster, but it didn't work. So yeah, I just keep knocking them out, and occasionally they get published. I've still got contracts and stuff. So really,
is the TV series still going?
TV series, God. There have been about 5 attempts to make it into a TV series so far. We're now on number 6. Pardon me. I think of it as, this is an answer I always give, I think of it as Schrodinger's TV series, basically. There's a box. One day we will open it and there will either be a TV series in it, or there won't be a TV series in it, or possibly a very angry cat. But either way, television is an enormously complex operation. This is a very expensive show, just because, apart from anything else, we blow up bits of central London in it. And just filming in central London is really expensive, never mind blowing chunks of Covent Garden up. And I'm getting a critique here. The robots are taking over. Flee for your life. Have you finished? Right, okay, I've completely forgotten what I was talking about now. It's a very expensive TV show, so it's going to have to be made, and the more money that's involved in a TV show, the more numbers of moving parts, as in TV executives you get. The more TV executives you get, the more things that can go horribly, horribly, horribly wrong. And so therefore I have stopped worrying and learned to embrace uncertainty. You'll know, you will know it's going to happen when we start casting, when they start actually putting names to, because when you have to actually start paying actors, that's when, who get paid first, I might add. That's when you know they're getting serious. But still, as Batgirl found out, you can, we make the whole thing and then we're not going to show it. So there you go. I don't know. And I'm rambling again. Question, quick. That person I tried to get last time.
So one of the Rivers of London book is set in Germany and has nothing to do with London. What's the reason for that, and is that going to happen again, or?
Yes. And because well, that was a novella, you see. So the whole point of the novellas was so that I could convince them to let me write books outside of the normal stream of Rivers of London. So then, before we get the Tobias Winter novella, which is the German one, we get What Abigail Did That Summer, which is the Foxes and Abigail one, and basically, it does what it says on the tin. Basically, the next one will be the Reynolds one. Of that sequence will be the Reynolds one, and you'll notice they're cunningly, so it's like autumn, summer, winter, spring, and the last one will be Nightingale in 1920s New York, for spring. It's called. So that's the sequence, and it allows me to write outside of the main sequence of the books without kind of like pissing everyone off. Because I mean, when I say everyone, I mean like my publisher. So I can go, oh, it's only 40,000 words. And I like novellas. I didn't like novellas originally, but I've grown to love them because when you're writing a book, you get to about 40,000 words and you think, oh God, I'm sick of this book. And with a novella, you're finished. It's great. Just when you're getting sick of it, you write the end. It's brilliant. I love doing that. So, and also I will write more novellas. I mean, I probably will write at least another Abigail novella and a Tobias novella because, you know, Germany, they keep taking me to their police stations and showing me around. Do you know they do 2.5 years of basic training? 2.5 years. Like, God, that's no wonder they're so well trained. Or, you know, or something. And I mean, I've just come back from Germany a couple of weeks ago, and they took me around a Bavarian police training college. And it was fantastic, and they let me put the armour on. My God, that stuff is heavy. And I go, do you go running uphill? Yeah, they make us run up steps with this thing that's like Naft Kevlar and ceramic plates. But the car is just absolutely packed with that much forms. There's like a whole section where in Britain you keep the guns, right? They have forms, because it's Germany, and they literally have forms, and then the Heckler and Koch, you know, so it's like forms, machine, pistol, more forms. And I just love the fact that I love writing about the German police because they would have a form for magic. You know, there would be a checklist where when a magical event happens somewhere in Germany, they would go down a checklist and it would say when to call the KDA and bring in the specialists. And I just love the idea of that. And then comparing it to here where it's like, oh, do you think we should should we tell the fully? I don't know. We might get into trouble. I just, you know, the whole agreement's a bundle of agreements. And even worse in America, where poor Agent Reynolds is basically on her own, facing an entire continent full of mad people. So, you know, which is also its own thing. And I like having that kind of spread of things I can write about, because it's nice to write about other things, and it's nice to write about other characters, because they stretch you as a writer, apart from anything else. It stops you from getting kind of really weird and stale. Although Peter Grant gets really jealous and starts complaining. But that's a different story. Rambling again, another question. Lady there?
Could you tell us more about the collaborative process in doing the graphic novels and potentially how that kind of changes over time?
Well, novels are wonderful. Novels are the closest thing to telepathy you're going...
Sorry. Oh, no.
Yes.
I said graphic novels.
Yeah, I am.
Oh, no, sorry.
I'm going to move on to graphic novels, starting with novels. God, everyone's so impatient these days. Novels are great. Novels are like the closest thing to telepathy you're going to get. Your brain to the page to somebody else's brain, right? You know, unless, of course, Cobner's reading it, which is there's a slight diversion. So, but with a graphic novel is more collaborative, because it's like my brain to the page to the artist, and then the artist to your eyes. And so immediately it becomes a collaborative process. Not as collaborative as television, which is just ridiculously collaborative, but more collaborative than writing a novel. And it was very interesting. I always wanted to write some graphic novels. So when I got to that kind of point where I had a big IP that I could use as a cudgel, I went around and hit Titan on the head until they let me do it. You can have my IP. Well, it's more like I tempted them. Look at IP, yes, you can have it, yes. Only if I can write it though. But I hadn't written comics before, but Andrew Cartmel had. And also he's a very good detail man. And you need someone who will go through all the panels going, no, that guy's doing the wrong thing in the wrong place, doesn't match up to the script. And so he does a lot of the detail work and making sure that everything's spelt correctly on the panels. And so it was a good collaborative process for that. Basically, after a while, we tried writing them together, and that didn't work because we got such vastly different sort of work processes. So what we ended up doing is that we would alternate. So he would do one as the lead writer, and then I would edit him, And so I would say, no, can't do that. Peter wouldn't do that. And then we would do it the other way around. And so I would do one and he would say, no, that doesn't make any sense. There's a huge hole in that plot. And that's how the collaborative process works. And then we brought in Celeste Bronfman for the last one because we felt it's all, we thought a little bit of diversity would not go amiss in the kind of production process as an experiment. And we're getting James Swallow to write the next one. And then I will write one after that because I'm beginning to feel guilty if I'm not writing them. And also I've come up with an idea. That's the real problem. The turnover in ideas is much faster in a graphic novel than it is. I'm amazed that anyone can keep writing a graphic novel for any length of time because the turnover of ideas is very, very high. And with Rivers of London, it's quite difficult because most of our artists actually come from Latin America. And now that Lee left, so most of our artists come from Latin America. And we have to send them photographs of everything. We have to send this is a traffic light. This is what, otherwise they will draw it the way they see it. And my main problem is convincing them that Beverly Brook is darker than that. And I go, Beverly Brook is darker than that and she has dreads. Dreads! Sending a reference photographs of people with dreads so that there's two things that comic book artists have an unfortunate tendency to do. One of them is balloon breasts, right? And the other one is lightening up black characters. Those are the two things because it's quite difficult to draw black characters as dark as they should be by colouring them because then they're just like this the hull on the page. So you have to do it. You have to be more clever than that in terms of use of highlights and everything. And they just tend to go for beige, basically. It's and you just sit there because there's only a limited number of times you can shout at someone sort of through an email. Especially when they live in Colombia or somewhere, you can't go over there and and they're very nice people and they're working basically for peanuts, so you can't really complain too much. So that's the collaborative process. It's the usual mess of all collaborative processes. I'm amazed good stuff can come out at the end of it, but I'm very pleased with a lot of it. Yeah, some of it I'm not so pleased with, some of it I'm very pleased with, some of it I think, oh God, I wish I hadn't come up with that idea. And you just go on and learn from your mistakes basically. And you get to know your artists after a while and you start working towards their strengths. And once you know your artists very well, you can start giving them more slack to enjoy themselves while they're because they're the one that's actually doing all the work. Writing a script for a comic is the easiest writing you can possibly do because nobody really has to read it except the artist and the letterer, and then they do all the work. So in a novel, I have to convey all the emotion and I have to convey the feeling and the atmosphere. No, but in a comic, the artist does all that, and you just go, it's dark and gloomy. They have to do dark and gloomy. I just put dark and gloomy. And you don't even have to write it very well. You can just put dark, gloomy, somewhere interesting, and next panel. So I enjoy that aspect of it. It's very relaxing. Another question, please.
Translations. Are you translating your work into German? You're selling them in Germany, aren't you?
Yes. I don't translate them.
No, I know you don't. No. How do you find the process?
My process with the Germans is very, very good. I have a very good translator called Christina Blum, and I send over the manuscript, and then she sends me back reams of emails going, "What does this mean?" I mean, at the beginning they were much, much more longer, but she's got used to kind of all the police slang in now and everything. So I can't tell. My German isn't good enough for me to tell whether it's what the translation is like. I mean, I do know that they don't bother trying to map German accents onto British accents because that never works because the accent they don't map very well. So Peter does not have the equivalent of a Berlin accent or something. From my French translations were very good, but they didn't help because I didn't sell in France. My Czech translations, I've noticed that I get very worried when they don't ask me any questions, right? Because most English people have to ask questions about some of Peter's slang and speech patterns, and if someone who's my South Korean translator never asked me any questions, I don't believe for 1 second that they were so au fait with North London English that they could just, you know, I mean, they didn't even query why South London was spelled SARF at any point. So, you know, you do worry about those translations when you're not getting any feedback. But translators, and in their defense, translators aren't used to talking to the writers. But now it's actually in my new contracts now that the translators have to, and when we do foreign contracts, it's now in my contract that the translators have to be given my email address and be encouraged to get in contact and ask questions. I love it. I love it because it's like a window into another culture. For example, the French translator, there's a scene in the second book where Stephanopoulos is a DS, is basically running an SIO on an operation where she should really be at least an acting inspector. And Peter gets into a car and he meets this inspector who's basically covering for Stephanopoulos while she's running the operation. And he says, "Hi, I'm Stephanopoulos' beard, right?" And I got a note from my French translator, "I do not understand what this expression beard means." And I said, it's a person that of a sex who goes to a party with a gay person in order to cover up the fact that they're gay, right? But it comes from the 1950s, where like actors would have what's known as beards, so that to cover up the fact that they were gay. And he said, "Oh, we don't have this for anything like that in French." So, "Well, what do you have?" And he said, "I'll have to think about it." And he came back and he had a phrase, and I wish I could remember what it was. I'm going to have to dig out the email one of these days. But basically, there's a French term for the man that takes your mistress to a party so you can go to it with your wife. And I thought to myself, you see, there's a window onto French culture right there. Don't have a thing for a beard, but they have something for that. And that's very interesting. I love doing that. And I would love to be doing that with my Korean translators, for example, because I watch quite a lot of, because I have Netflix, I watch quite a lot of Korean drama, and I'm watching it going, I'm getting about 20% of this. I really am, even with the subtitles. Basically, I'm missing a lot of the nuance on this conversation, on the conversations. You do that a lot with anime as well. You watch it and you go, this is making a lot more sense to Japanese people than it's making to me. And but I would like to get that insight, so I'm quite selfish that way. And lazy. Selfish and lazy, so my two endearing qualities, really. Another question before I embarrass myself. Anyone? Oh, I had someone.
Hello. Being from Charlottesville, Virginia, I was quite excited when the Virginia Gentleman Company arrived in Charlottesville. And so I was wondering where the inspiration for the Virginia Gentleman Company came from.
That was very easy. I mean, you look at the creation of the United States, and you have Franklin and you have Jefferson, right? And they were both people who spent quite a lot of time in Europe at just the time when the Newtonian synthesis would be becoming more popular and more established. And so if any of the two founding fathers were going to pick up magic, it was going to be those two. And of course, it allows you to have two very different kind of like attitudes towards things. So Franklin was a philanthropist and a founder, and Jefferson was an awful person for all his brilliance. And so therefore you can have two kind of like separate warring things. And I thought that was quite good. That was quite an interesting thing to say about the United States, the foundation of the United States, the kind of the split between the ideals and the practice. And so therefore, I mean, I'd love to say it was that kind of deep when I wrote it, but it was just like, oh, Jefferson and Franklin, right? So that's why. And obviously, the University of Pennsylvania with the printers men, with the virtuous printers men who are the Franklin guys, and the University of, I've forgotten the name of it now, Virginia was both founded, you see, they both founded universities, you see. How could I resist that? So basically, yeah, that's where that came from. So that's why the Virginia, and I thought, well, what happened to them? What happened to them during the war? What happened to them after the war? And I thought they kind of mutated into a PMC, and that was basically sort of, I thought that was quite telling, and have moved away from magic and into the kind of suppression of magic rather than actual magic. Whereas I haven't really decided what happened to the printers men yet.
As someone from Pennsylvania, I'm going to keep my fingers crossed for some confidence.
Oh, yeah, I think it'll be positive. Thank you. I'll bear that in mind. Another question? It's all right, I'm back. Oh, over there.
Hi. Your novels are very location specific, especially, for instance, the Downham Estate, which is where my grandparents came from. How do you choose a location, and when you've chosen a location, do you do a recce of it?
Oh, I go everywhere I can. I mean, I didn't go to Seville for Amongst Our Weapons because the pandemic was on. More's the pity. But yeah, I try and go everywhere I can. I mean, it was quite difficult during the pandemic to get to the places I wanted to get to. One of the reasons I wrote the 2 novellas was because I wasn't going to go to America. Apart from anything else, the Reynolds novel is set in a small town in northern Wisconsin, and you actually can't get there on public transport whatsoever. There's just no public transport, and I thought I can't get there. And the other one was set in 1920s New York, which is just you might as well just. I've been to New York, and I thought the historical part of it you can do from your home. Other than that, I like to go. I mean, for example, I'm shuttling up and down between here and Aberdeen at the moment because the next novel is set in Aberdeen because Stuart McBride, basically. Yeah, I always try and go. And, you know, the further away it is, the harder it is. So the book set in Germany was quite difficult because I'd write something and I'd realise that they've gone left instead of right, and I'd had all the research material on the rightward direction. Then I had to go back on a plane to Trier, go left, come back, and weirdly, it was easier to get to Trier than it was to get to Herefordshire. So there you go, quicker anyway.
And how do you choose the specific London locations?
Oh, well, some of it's just kind of like eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Some of it's like, oh, I haven't been south of the river, I better do something south of the river. Some of it's like, for example, someone got murdered in Bromley because my friend has a house in Bromley and I didn't have to go anywhere. I've just been round there recently, so I just murdered someone in his house. You know, it's like, I was James Swallow, in case you're wondering who that was. He says, you've murdered someone in my house. Yeah. It's a perfectly good house. They won't know. It's all Pebble Dash down there. And you know, and I try and find places that are just. I try and spread my. You know, my comfort zone, of course, is North London, right? So you know, when I'm in a hurry, everything contracts down to Camden. I try not to, but you go, oh, just set it there because I know what that looks like, and I can just pop out and have a look. One of the reasons why it was nice writing the Abigail book is because I could actually see most of the locations from my window, and so therefore didn't have to go very far. And also I grew up running around on the heath, and so therefore that wasn't a very hard thing to do. I knew all the locations sort of off by heart. But I like to get about, and you know, when I was doing the 4th book, I wanted a council. It was originally, the 4th book was based on the scandal of Westminster, where they put people into asbestos-ridden homes, flats, as part of their gerrymandering, their illegal gerrymandering, for which I have never forgiven them. And but then I thought, I haven't gone south of the river, and then I looked over, and there was the Haygate estate, and I just thought, aha! And the trees actually were a feature in the Haygate estate. The actual trees, they had some magnificent plane trees. And the whole redevelopment program was almost completely squirreled by the fact that these trees were essentially listed. Nobody liked the estate, but they all loved the trees. And that's where the dryad in that came from, because I thought I have to have something like that. But Sky Garden is completely made up as an estate. It's not the Haygate estate. It's kind of where the Haygate estate was, which is now locked down, not completely flat, and being replaced by luxury flats, even as we speak. Although, God knows, Elephant and Castle, you couldn't do anything that generations of planners have already done to Elephant and Castle. I mean, if you go down there, you go, oh, 2 roundabouts. You weren't satisfied with 1 roundabout. You had to stick in 2, make it completely impassable. And you see that a lot, like Newport, perfectly nice town, ruined by planning. And Coventry, we all know about Coventry. So, since it was about bad planning, that book, then the Elephant Castle was perfect. But while I was down there doing a recce, I found that the Colombians lived down there. I went down there and found that there was an entire Colombian community with shops and everything underneath the Elephant Castle train station. Never occurred to me there was even a Colombian kind of area. So so that's why you always have to go. You always have to go and look, because that sort of thing is not on Google Street View, unless you're really, really eagle-eyed. You have to go down and look. And my motto is, if you're going to set something in a desert, you have to go and at least smell a camel, which you can do by going to London Zoo, I might add, without actually having to go to the desert. In fact, actually, you can probably smell a camel from outside London Zoo if you downwind, if you know where to stand, which is a handy thing to have. Like I said, lazy and just lazy, that's me. Another question? Yes, this lady here.
Hiya. I live in Bow, so I'm pretty close to the Thames and even closer to Regent's Canal. So as a fairly mundane, sky-dwelling person, I see quite a lot of magical-looking stuff on the canal and also quite a few crime scenes. So I was just wondering, I've read all the novels, but not novellas and stuff. So can you just ramble about canals for a bit and how that fits into the law?
Well, I had to write this short story. And they didn't give me very long to do it, and it was called King of the Rats. And I had to work out why this estate agent had been convinced he was a rat. And I thought, well, he must have pissed someone off. And I decided what he'd done is he'd pissed off the goddess of the canal, of Regent's Park Canal. Because there's those great, big, lovely houses down near Regent's Park. And I thought he'd gone in and found what he thought was an easy mark, and it turned out to be an orangutan. And you see, partly this was a tribute to Terry Pratchett as well, but it was I decided that the rivers all look down at the canals because the canals are artificial, and they're all kind of very snobby about the canals. Oh, look, they've got an artificial watercourse, what is that, right? And the flow rate is nothing, 2 cubic meters a day, practically, right? They're very snobby about flow rate, the rivers. And but I thought, yeah, the canals would have, and I don't know, the orangutan just turned up. But the canals are all, what causes a genius loci is very undefined. And so therefore it leaves me a lot of room. So some places do have them, some places don't have them. And usually what happens is I sit there and I have an idea, and I go, aha! That will be the goddess of this particular river or the god of that particular river. I don't try and force it beyond a certain point, because either you come up with something good or you don't. And if I don't come up with something good, I leave it until I will come up with something good. And that's part of the walking around and poking your nose in, things. And actually sitting in cafes and watching people walk past is actually my favourite way of doing it. But that's part of the process of you get to know the local history, you get to know the history of the river or the waterway or the canal, and then you start to build up a picture of it. For example, Tyburn is really easy because she rises in Hampstead, she flows through Primrose Hill, comes down through Mayfair, goes under Buckingham Palace, comes out either side of the House of Commons. She's not going to be like the goddess of small traders, is she? She's going to be the goddess of backroom deals and cigar smoke and brandy and kind of all that kind of stuff. But also there's that connection with the Tyburn gallows, so there's a little bit of old hemp and death about Tyburn, which I quite like. And also she used to listen to X-ray specs when she was younger, which is, she keeps very, very quiet. And what happens is they start to accumulate. So you basically have a basic idea of them, and then I didn't know about the X-ray specs until I was 3 books in. So you start to accumulate these kind of ideas, and they start to fill up, and then they just, it's like real life. It just layers up. I'm planning to go back to Bow there's so much London. There's so much London, and it's all interesting. I went to Hounslow. You wouldn't think Hounslow was that interesting. God, it's full of stuff. You just think, Hounslow, why are you so interesting? Wembley, I haven't done Wembley yet. Lewisham has not really been inflicted. I haven't inflicted myself on Lewisham. And, there's places like Shooters Hill, there's Gants Hill Roundabout, there's the Polish War Memorial, all these places that you only know from traffic reports. And they're all really interesting. Like I said, my dad was from down here. So, I'm really interested in the history of the East End because it's my family history. My brother wrote a really good book about it, so I don't even have to do any research. It's great. So yeah, I forgot what the question was now. Yeah, it's close enough for government work.
So throughout the books, like magic is getting stronger, and it's got to the point where the Metropolitan Police roll their eyes every time something magical happens. Is that going to be an ongoing thing? Is society at large going to discover it, or is it always, or does that move too far away from the core themes of the book?
I don't know. I'm not entirely sure magic is getting stronger. I think what's happened is it's kind of like re-emerging, which is not quite the same thing. My attitude, it was after the war, because just about everyone was dead, there wasn't anyone doing any magic. And so people just assumed that magic had gone away, but it was always kind of burbling around under the surface, blah, 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 blah. And various things and because magic is a constantly renewing resource, oh God, I'm giving away a bit more than I meant to, then if it doesn't get used in the environment, it just builds up in the environment. And as it builds up in the environment, it just forms, the metaphor I always use is it becomes a supersaturated. Has anyone ever done chemistry and you've done a supersaturated solution, right? And you get a supersaturated, you get basically a fish tank full of supersaturated solution, and you just drop something in it and like crystals just go poof, poof, poof all over it, because suddenly everything unsaturates. It's a long time since I did chemistry. And I always imagine it being like that. When there's a lot of magic in the air, all it takes is a little bit of grit, and then suddenly something will form. And in the first case, the rivers are like big pieces of grit, and so therefore they attract magic more naturally. But it could be anything. It could be, for example, in the short story, the children's sections of a Waterstones, right? It could be a house. It could be a house where, in Hampstead. All of these things start. So what happens is more and more of this stuff to happen. So you get more and more vampires because there's more magic for them to feed on and things like that. And more phenomenon. But also, as people become aware, it's also the observer effect, where people become aware of it, and as they look for it, they find it. And so therefore, is there actually more activity going on, or is it just that Peter's going, "Ooh, look at that," right? And but that's a lovely ambiguous position to be in as a novelist, because it leaves it completely open. I don't know what's going to happen. I've only just got to 2018, so it's like I'm still behind real events. I haven't got to the pandemic yet, so God knows what's going to happen. Although I think the foxes are going to have a good time. I think I might, I was sitting there, because during the pandemic, I was going, wow, I bet the foxes are having a good time, like all the animals coming out and like trolling around the streets. And it really was true. During the pandemic, I could look out my window and they'd just be woofing past, like, la, 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 la. You can't come out, we can. We don't care. We're going to sit outside your window and have mad sex really loudly. Foxes. God, can't live with them, can't live without them. Another question? Probably not about foxes.
Will we find out about the Kew Garden incident?
No. Because I have no idea what happened to Kew Gardens. No, I mean, I don't know, maybe. I think slowly, it's a bit like, did anyone ever watch The Simpsons? You remember there was that character called McBain, right? It was like, I can't remember, it was played by the Raina Wolfcastle or something. And he did that, like, you saw little bits of the movie, right? And then one day someone went, hold on a second, and they strung all the little bits of the movie that you saw in The Simpsons together into a complete story. I think one day you may be able to do that with all the Q stuff and say, oh, that's what happened. But that, not yet. And I'll only just start adding things that you don't know what the story is, just to keep you all in suspense anyway. Also, I try to make it as much like real life as possible. You'll notice that not everything always gets tied up at the ends of the books, that not everything is solved, not everyone's motives is explained, because that's what real police work is like. You get to once you have what they call a JD, which is a judicial something, judicial disposal. As a police officer, you don't care, right? It doesn't matter so if you catch someone and you got their DNA on the murder weapon and a CCTV footage of them stabbing someone to death, you don't care why. You don't need that. You just need to put them away for stabbing someone to death. And you've got enough to put them away. You don't need to find out what their psychological trauma was or whatever. And I wanted to reflect that in that they don't always know why somebody has done something or what the motive was or what the underlying cause is. But they just have to solve the problem as far as they can within the parameters of their own knowledge. And that's actually deliberate. It's not just really sloppy plotting on my part. Honest. Promise it isn't, except for maybe book 5. But oh, one here?
Yeah, just wanted to ask, are we likely to see more of the kind of malevolent intelligence thing from false values, or is that door closed?
I don't know. I basically put that in so that if I needed a malevolent intelligence thing, it was all set up. And also, I've always wanted to use the phrase "cool and unsympathetic" as a tribute to H.G. Wells. You have ideas, you put them there, and then you think, I'm never going to use that again. And then, like 2 books later, you go, "Ooh, I know, it could be that malevolent thing from the false value," or not. I wasn't expecting the Spanish Inquisition particularly, so. I just thought, I'll do something about the Spanish Inquisition. Spanish Inquisition. I just wanted to do it historical. I wanted something that had happened in like late, early modern period that would reflect into the present day, and it just ended up being the Spanish Inquisition. And then I came up with the title, and that was it, really, for me, as far as it went. So I forgot the question. What was the question again? I can't even say it. Malevolent. I don't know. Possibly not in a Peter Grant book. Possibly in an Abigail book, or possibly in a Tobias Winter book. Tobias Winter seems like more likely the kind of person to run into a malevolent intelligence out in the forest somewhere. It's just his bad luck. Oh God, not another malevolent intelligence. That's what it's like. Another question? Well, I think we've got time for a couple more.
Do you know a lot about the age profile of your readers?
Nothing. We know nothing about the age profile of my readers. It became clear very early on that I wasn't being bought by the people who I thought I was going to be bought by. Basically, when we launched the first book, I went in, I was aiming at Middleist, right? I was aiming at Middleist. Gallants were aiming at Middleist. My agent was aiming at. We were all going for Middleist, right? This is what we had a very clear idea of who was going to buy the books. It was going to be people like me, the kind of person that goes into Waterstones, goes straight to the science fiction section to see if anyone has miraculously written some books since yesterday, right? Okay, this is before the internet. Now, it's much easier now, the internet, though. You just look it up, you can just find out if someone's written a book. I used to get this itch, like twice a year. I used to get, it's about time for a Pratchett book. And I used to wander into, that was how I used to do it, wander into Waterstones. On the off chance, Terry Pratchett had released a new book, because we didn't have access to Google. There wasn't Google. Now there's Google, you can just go, is there a new book? Like that. And so I knew who was going to read my books. It was going to be basically people like me, or my ilk, my tribe, as you might say. The first indication that I had that this was not the case was when a friend of mine, I'd given him a copy of the book, which is very generous of me, I think, given that it's a first edition and quite valuable now. And I said, "What do you think of my book?" And he said, "I don't know. My mother has stolen it and she won't give it back." And I was like, "Your mother? Your mother shouldn't be reading my book. She's not in the demographic." So, and then it became a bestseller, and it became very clear that I wasn't a bestseller in the same way that, say, Joe Abercrombie was a bestseller. He's a massive bestseller in science fiction and fantasy, and so therefore, he gets all the groupies at the conventions and everything, and lots of prizes, and wins Hugos and stuff, and I don't, and I'm not bitter about that at all in any way whatsoever. And I said, "Look, who's reading the bloody book," right? And so they did some research. About book 3, 4, they started doing some research. And they did some research, and they called me in, and there was a PowerPoint presentation, and it said, "Who reads Ben Aaronovich's books?" And I went, "That's a good question. I would like to know the answer." And it goes, "It is both men and women. I thought, unhelpful. You know, I should hope so. And it turned out that I'm evenly spread amongst all categories, whatever they were that year. I mean, the categories a year, they have a different category every year. You know, Winchester woman, dog walking man, whatever, right? There was like a slight statistically, so I was evenly spread across all categories except for a slight increase in pregnant women and teenagers. I really was quite hopeful that there wasn't an overlapping Venn diagram. But that was it, and not really enough of a statistical thing for them to start a proper marketing campaign aimed at maternity units. So, and this of course causes the marketing people great pain because they don't know who's buying it. So basically, we just put them out there and hope every time I write one, that people are going to buy it. So please buy my book, please buy my book. I've got a really big advance and I have to pay it back. And that's basically, and it's wonderful kind of uncertainty, and it's very nice. I mean, I have identified certain categories. There's the former Pratchett readers. Well, I mean, obviously they're still Pratchett readers, but unfortunately there's no more Pratchett. Then there's what I call my gruesome grannies. And I met them about 2-3 years into and they sent me to a crime convention. And I looked over and it was a sea of women with blue rinse hair in Guildford. And I didn't know blue rinse hair was a thing. I thought that was like a stereotype, like a Monty Python stereotype. No, there they were, right? A sea of blue rinse hair, right? And they all like Mark Billingham books, right? Where the guy rips open people's chests and sews live birds in, right? And I realized that what they liked was really horrible murders. They were attracted to kind of like, the guy that gets cooked from the inside out. That's what they liked about my books. So I try and put at least one horrible murder into every book just for them because, they're an important demographic and I don't want to lose them. But, I thought, okay, that's one set of people, but I don't know who buys my books. I really don't. It's led to a philosophy that I now tell all new writers, which is write the book you want to write because you cannot hit the zeitgeist. You will, unless you're Osman, obviously he can hit the zeitgeist, but that's a completely different thing. Write the book you want to write and just hope that other people want to read it. There's no right to be read, right? You can write 100,000 words and nobody can be interested in reading it, or like 5 people can read it, or the Booker Prize committee can like it, and 5 people can read it. But you must write the book you want to write. That must be the impulse when you're writing your first book. It must be the book I want to write. I want to write this book and I'm going to write the book the way I want to write it. After you've finished it, you can go back and go, I couldn't sell this book because of, it didn't make any sense, or the character was horrible and nobody liked them, or something. You can make adjustments after that. But in the first instance, you must always write the book you want to write. That's my big, what you must do as an author. And the second one is buy a comfortable chair. Because you're going to spend a lot of time in it. So you don't know who the demographic is. You don't know who's going to be buying your book. The publishers don't know. Your agent doesn't know. Nobody bloody knows anything. And that's basically what happened with me and my books. I'm very, very pleased. I wasn't expecting it. I wake up every morning going, yes! Like that, which is making me a very high. Success happened to me quite late, you see. So unlike it's kind of like 25 to 30-year-old first-time authors who are really big, I don't take it for granted, right? So I'm not angry that my second book is not selling. I'm just like so happy that I don't have to worry about my mortgage anymore. Basically, that's and I can pay for things for my son and stuff like that. And so. I'm talking about money, which is always a bad sign. I've got time for one more question. Try not to make it a long one. Go on, someone wants to have a question over there? Maybe? Someone look like they might put their hand up. Sylvester McCoy, who I've been on stage with, would just dive into the audience with his microphone and make you ask a question.
Oh, God. Is that somebody else asked me before? Yeah, go on.
That's all right.
he would literally grab a microphone, rush out into the audience and shove it in someone's face, go, ask me a question. Ah.
Yeah, I was just wondering, when you're writing a book, especially the stories, and when you are developing the plots, so do you really know what's going to happen next, or how the story will end, or you just go with it? Because some writers usually just don't know; they are just keep going and then exploring what will happen next.
It depends. It depends. Some books I have a very clear idea of what happens at the end. Some books I have a very clear of what happens in the middle. And some books I have a very clear idea of what happens at the beginning. Often that, you know, it would be nice if I would get all three at the start of the book, but unfortunately I don't. The thing is that mistake people make is plot is not separate from character. Your plot is just your character's emotion. And if you like your characters, and if your characters are complex and talk to you, which mine do incessantly, whether I want them to or not, they're going to object to things if they don't think it's going the way they think it should go. And so therefore you find yourself changing the plot. So you may have a rough idea of where you're going, but you may find yourself going in a different direction. I'm sorry, I'm going to have to spoil something horribly for one of the books. In Foxglove Summer, for example, it never occurred to me that Beverly was going to turn up in the countryside, right? And then I realized they couldn't really get together with the kids still missing. So then the kids had to be found halfway through the book. And that meant I had to work out why we were finding the kids halfway through the book. In the end, it worked really well because, of course, you were expecting them to turn up at the end of the book, and then suddenly in the middle, that you find the missing kids. And therefore, what is the mystery? The mystery is why there must be a further level of mystery. And that, I felt that worked very well. But that wasn't why that happened. That happened because the characters were going, well, we can't have sex while the kids are missing. That's just sick. Okay, you're bloody 25. You can have sex during... I remember 25. You can have sex standing up. Bloody hell, for God's sake. So, you know, that's sort of, I mean, that's a really extreme example, but there are, you know, basically with books, people will not do things, or they say that's stupid, or they come up with better solutions, or they say, no, as a police officer, I would do this. And you go, oh shit. You know, and that's just the way it goes. But some people, I mean, basically they call them pantsters and plotsters, which I hate that phrase. It's so infantile, sounds really infantile. But basically, some people write by the seat of their pants, which proves that this is an American term. And some people plot everything out, but actually most people are, you know, along that line between those 2 points. I find as I'm writing the book, I get a clearer and clearer idea as if it's coming into focus of what's going to happen at the end, until I'm about 2/3 of the way through, and then I'm pretty certain what's going to happen at the end. And it's sort of downhill from that point. You're kind of crawling up the hill going, oh, how am I going to get 200 words out of this? You get to about 2/3 of the way through and you're starting to worry that you don't have enough words to tell all the story you want to tell, and the book's going to overrun. And I don't like books that overrun because I don't see why I should write more than 96,000 words. Thank you very much. It's not like I get extra money for those words. All right, that's going to be the last question, otherwise this will go on forever and ever and ever. I will be signing books in a room over there somewhere. And I will sign your other books. You don't have to have bought a book today, although it's nice because then they like me at the booksellers. I will sign Doctor Who stuff and everything that you want to bring in. If you would just give me like 5 minutes to get in there, get set up and have a quick snuffle of something. I've been an author, you've been an audience. Thank you very much.